In June 1940, to be for the year 1960 faded into distant memory of another era of conflict, a quiet RAF airfield in Wales experienced one of the most astonishing moments of the Second World War. In the early afternoon at RAF Pembrey ground crews paused their routine duties when they spotted a fast-approaching single-seat fighter cutting through the calm sky. At first glance, some believed it was a new Allied test aircraft, while others thought it might be a damaged friendly fighter limping home. Yet as the machine descended with perfect control and an unmistakable silhouette, an unsettling realization spread across the airfield. This was a German Focke Wulf Fw 190, the feared Luftwaffe fighter that had been dominating the air war over Europe. It was flying low with its landing gear down as if returning to its own home base. No alarms had been raised, no pursuit aircraft shadowed it. It simply approached with a confidence that suggested it belonged here. The RAF personnel could scarcely believe what they were seeing. A group of soldiers scrambled for cover, unsure if this was a trick or a desperate attempt at a forced landing. The aircraft touched down smoothly, rolled along the runway, and came to a controlled stop. There was no damage, no smoke, and no sign of distress. The canopy opened and out stepped Oberleutnant Armin Faber, certain he had just landed at a Luftwaffe airfield in occupied France. He looked around expecting to see German ground crews. Instead, he found himself staring at stunned British airmen pointing rifles at him. In that moment, confusion washed over him, and then the truth. He had delivered one of the most advanced German fighters of the war directly into Allied hands, completely intact. It was a moment that would soon ripple through intelligence circles, from RAF Fighter Command to the Royal Aircraft Establishment. As British airmen secured the aircraft, they immediately understood the significance of what had occurred. For months, the Fw 190 had outclassed the Spitfire in speed, roll rate, and firepower. Now standing before them was the first fully intact example to ever fall into Allied possession. It was a gift that could transform air combat, analysis, engineering, research, and tactical planning. Allied intelligence officers converged on the airfield within hours, marking the beginning of one of the greatest intelligence coups of the air war. This quiet Welsh runway had unexpectedly become the site of a turning point in aviation history and the broader fight for air superiority over Europe. In late 1941, as air warfare was evolving along the Western Front, the arrival of a new German fighter sent shockwaves through Allied Fighter Command. This aircraft was the Focke Wulf Fw 190, a machine that quickly gained a fearsome reputation across the skies of France and the English Channel. RAF pilots, who had long relied on the Spitfire, this symbol of British aerial supremacy, suddenly found themselves outmatched by a fighter that seemed to rewrite the rules of air combat. Its powerful BMW radial engine delivered remarkable acceleration, and its roll rate was unmatched by any Allied aircraft of the time. The Fw 190 became a symbol of Luftwaffe dominance and a major searchable keyword among intelligence analysts who desperately sought answers as losses mounted. Before the United States fully entered the European-era war, British fighter squadrons faced the worst of the Fw 190's rise. Seasoned veterans reported that even the improved Spitfire Mark V struggled to compete. In climbing terms, the German fighter pulled away with ease. In dive escapes, it vanished like a stone dropped from the sky. Its heavy armament of machine guns and cannons delivered devastating firepower that could shred an Allied aircraft in seconds. This sudden shift in performance left commanders scrambling. RAF operational reports documented encounter after encounter where pilots returned shaken, claiming they had never faced anything like this. Tactical manuals had to be re-evaluated, and intelligence summaries began referencing the urgent need to understand the advanced aerodynamics and engineering behind the new Luftwaffe threat. As America joined the war in 1942, Allied strategists recognized that they were now up against a fighter that could undermine future bombing campaigns and air superiority missions. Engineers examining wreckage from downed Fw 190s found fragments of technology that hinted at revolutionary design choices, yet none of these remnants offered a complete picture. Without a fully intact aircraft, aerodynamicists were left guessing. Test pilots tried to simulate FW-190 performance based on limited data, but it was evident that the Allies lacked the clarity needed to counter Germany's newest weapon. The urgency grew throughout early 1942 as loss rates rose and morale wavered. Every squadron commander knew the unpleasant truth. The Allies needed an intact FW-190 or they risked falling permanently behind in the technological race for air dominance. No one could imagine that this priceless intelligence goal would soon be achieved not through a daring spy mission or a risky retrieval, but through a single navigational error in broad daylight. In June 1942, during a period when dogfights over the English Channel were becoming increasingly chaotic, a young Luftwaffe officer named Oberleutnant Armin Faber joined what he believed would be a routine escort mission. He was no novice. Faber was an accomplished pilot respected within his squadron and fully confident in the capabilities of his FW-190. As America joined the war and air battles intensified, German fighter units were under constant pressure to intercept Allied aircraft. On this particular mission, Faber and his comrades engaged RAF Spitfires in a fast-moving high-altitude clash that rapidly descended into confusion. Clouds rolled across the channel and violent maneuvering broke up the formations, leaving pilots to rely on instincts and quick judgment. In these moments, even the best aviators faced the silent threat of disorientation, a known hazard that few openly discussed. During the engagement, Faber pursued an RAF Spitfire with aggressive determination. He believed he had positioned himself perfectly, and after scoring hits, he broke off expecting to rejoin his unit. But rapid turns, thick cloud banks, and shifting horizons disoriented him more than he realized. Instead of heading south toward occupied France, he turned north without knowing it. The channel below him looked deceptively familiar, a gray expanse blending with the dull summer sky. For a Luftwaffe pilot accustomed to flying over water during daily patrols, the view offered no immediate warning. He continued flying with confidence, believing he was lined up with the French coastline. This moment of miscalculation would become one of the most valuable accidents in the history of Allied intelligence. As Faber descended toward land, he saw an airfield that he assumed must belong to the Luftwaffe. The layout looked orderly, the runway clear, and the surrounding terrain vaguely similar to bases he had visited in Brittany. He lowered his landing gear and prepared for what he thought would be a routine touchdown. He had no idea that he was gliding toward RAF Pembrey in Wales. Disorientation in aerial combat often resulted in tragic losses, but in this rare instance it produced a windfall for the Allies. Faber taxied to a halt, fully expecting German ground crews to rush to him. Instead, he stepped out and found British soldiers staring in disbelief at the intact FW-190 he had just delivered. This single navigational error provided the Allies with exactly what they had spent months desperately trying to obtain: an undamaged example of the Luftwaffe's most advanced fighter. It was a turning point created not by strategy or espionage, but by the timeless human vulnerability to confusion in the heat of battle. In October 1942, as the England Prime Minister and Allied commanders pushed for greater air superiority, an extraordinary opportunity unfolded within the laboratories and test fields of the Royal Aircraft Establishment at Farnborough. The intact FW-190 captured at RAF Pembrey was transported under heavy guard and immediately became the center of the most important aviation analysis project of the war. Engineers who had been working with fragments of wreckage for months could hardly believe they now had a complete operational aircraft sitting in front of them. It was a moment equal to unlocking the enemy's most guarded technological secret. Every bolt, every panel, every instrument was examined in exhaustive detail as researchers worked to uncover what made this Luftwaffe fighter so dominant. Searchable keywords such as FW-190 performance testing and wartime aviation analysis soon filled internal reports as excitement grew. As testing began, Allied pilots gained first-hand insight into the machine they had feared in combat. The aircraft's roll rate proved to be exceptional, allowing it to change direction faster than any Allied fighter at the time. Its radial BMW engine delivered powerful acceleration at low and medium altitudes, giving German pilots a decisive edge in most early encounters. The heavy armament of machine guns and cannons created a devastating burst that explained why so many Spitfires have been lost in mere seconds during dogfights. The more the test pilots explored its capabilities, the more they understood why the FW-190 had seized the advantage across 1941 and early 1942. Yet they also discovered weaknesses the Luftwaffe had never intended the Allies to learn.